Which was taken is to revitalize the subcommittees of the task force, which include the Committee on Health, the Committee on Relief and Welfare, the Committee on Transport and Trade, the Committee on Security, the Committee on Communication, the Committee on Finance, and a new Committee on Monitoring, Evaluation and Accountability has also been established. And the task force has charged these subcommittees to sit beginning today and work out details, because you heard when the president was addressing the nation saying some of the details will come out from the Prime Minister and the Minister of Health. So these subcommittees have actually gone to start sitting, and within a few days we shall come back to you to give you comprehensive details on some of the areas which were not maybe touched clearly in the President's address. I want to invite the Minister of Health, as guided by the Prime Minister, to add, because you sit on the engine as we respond to this COVID-19, to add a few comments, and then we can invite questions and any clarification or comments from members of the media, and we proceed. Honorable Janache.
Thank you very much. That was instituted by His Excellency on the 18th is an opportunity for us to ensure that the health facilities are not overwhelmed and that the health workers do not get exhausted. They are directives that he requested us to ensure are done, and one is the issue of oxygen, ramping up oxygen to ensure that we have adequate supplies. And in this meeting today, we have agreed that the Ministry of Finance should provide resources to procure more oxygen cylinders. And this was immediate. The second was to ensure that we distribute mosquito nets to the women who are selling, women and men, who are selling food in the markets. And we made a commitment to ensure that that is done with effect from tomorrow. On the issue of human resource, we are extremely grateful that the Ministry of Finance has identified 7 billion shillings to provide to the Ministry of Health by Tuesday, so that pending allowances can be paid and health workers can be motivated to do their work. Again, we continue to appeal to the general public to ensure that they follow the standard operating procedures, which is the cheapest way to prevent COVID-19. As we continue, we shall be explaining other issues as we discuss them in our strategic committee. I thank you.
The second one, just briefly, when you talk about vulnerable people in Uganda, there are so many, there are in millions. Of course, you have tried to highlight some of them, but if you remember in the last, what we have gone through in this COVID period, almost all businesses have been closed. You are going to hear again the business community complaining about rent. They have been told, close your businesses, and they are going to be told.
Fellow Ugandans, we shall come up with a list of vulnerable people after the Ministry of Gender, and we are telling them tomorrow, because we don't have time to waste. Tomorrow we need a list of those vulnerable people, such that is can start moving, because we don't want to see people or Ugandans die of hunger. How much we have, first of all, we shall first of all have a look at what resource envelope we have as a country. Then two, we shall also depend on the number of people we want to give support. We should have gone for food, but you know how difficult it was. We are also borrowing relief from other countries like Kenya. Kenya used the M-Pesa, South Africa. There is another country that used the voucher system. We are also trying to borrow relief from other countries. The vulnerable people are across the world, and therefore I want Ugandans to trust us. We shall do whatever it takes to make sure that the vulnerable people don't die because of lockdown. I think the Minister for Gender will add something because she's more technical in that area. Some business people, especially those who pay rent in the arcades, the landlords continue to demand money even when they are not working. We talked about this at length, and we also referred it to the Committee of Finance. We also referred it to the Committee of Finance, Health, so that we want to engage. We want to engage the landlords, because these people are not working anyway. We want to engage the landlords so that we can negotiate with them for our people. And then, of course, we also have banks that already had issued out loans to our communities, to the business community. We want to see how best we can negotiate with banks so that during this lockdown period, our people can be helped. Government has not yet given accountability to the people, to the money that was collected by well-wishers. What I can say is, because I was in the Ministry of Health, some of this help came in terms of food, and we are distributing this food to the vulnerable people. Secondly, we distributed this food in the health centers, in the hospitals, because I remember one time I was a guest of honor when I took food to Entebbe Hospital, and that food was given to us by the late Honorable Kasamba. So some food was distributed to hospitals then, during the time of lockdown, of 2020. The vehicles, I have been a chair of the logistics committee in the ministry. Some vehicles were given to hospitals, regional referral hospitals. And some money, the money that people collected, what I know is that we have 40 billion still on account, waiting for Toyota Uganda to deliver those vehicles so that they can be paid that balance. But I have the Minister of Health here, because that money, all the donations were channeled to the Minister of Health. I have given you the information I have, but she has more details since she was my senior. Moses Mulondo, New Vision. The affected companies. Are we going to give stimulus packages like other countries have done? I don't think we have capacity. We are a developing country. These big companies should also appreciate that we are struggling to make our people survive. I would only request that these companies should appreciate the conditions under which we work as a nation. I don't think some of these companies are Ugandan companies. Others have come from outside the world. And they have seen other nations struggling with this scourge. And therefore, I cannot really commit government that we are going to look for money, put it aside, so that these companies can survive through this pandemic. You want us to call back at the budget, call Parliament, we sit, do reallocation, and allocate money to Ministry of Health. We have talked about this, and I think with time we shall be giving you how far we shall have gone in this regard. I cannot commit right now. We instituted a committee of finance. They will come and guide, give us recommendations, which recommendations we shall use and inform you accordingly. Testing capacity is limited. I request the Minister of Health to respond to this. The same question of vulnerable people, I think I've ably answered that. I want to once again thank you, our press, our fellow Ugandans, for the trust you have put in some of us, for the trust you have put in our president, and also to thank my colleagues, the second deputy premier, the third deputy premier, the minister of security, our minister of disaster preparedness, our minister for science and technology, our minister, our general. I have already talked about general. Can I forget him? Our minister for local government, our minister for gender, and also. First of all, let me state here very clearly that there was a committee that was put in place to handle donations. And this committee was under the office of the Prime Minister, and the donations were of three types. There were donations in kind, which were mainly food materials. Then there were donations of vehicles and money. The total amount of money collected was 29 billion, and I'll give a breakdown. Right Honorable, you have already talked about food. The vehicles that were donated, Right Honorable, were allocated to the districts. And the permanent secretary of the Ministry of Health took off time, I don't remember which month, and went and gave a comprehensive accountability. I don't know why the press have chosen to forget that. But since they have, I will request her to give a breakdown of where the vehicles went. The 29 billion went to the Consolidated Fund, and it had to go through all the procedures of the Public Finance and Management Act. And I can state here that while the money has been there, it was remitted to the Ministry of Health last week. Of this money, the total of 29 billion, 23 billion is for procurement of 282 pickup vehicles, as was the intention of His Excellency the President from the very beginning, so that every district, city, and municipality can get a vehicle for surveillance and other activities. These vehicles were ordered for, and they will be paid for next week. The 23 billion is available. 3.5 billion was allocated to construction of blood banks at Soroti and Arua. And accordingly, Ministry of Finance will release that money. I want to believe next financial year, because they cannot do it this financial year. It has come to an end. And then 2.5 billion was allocated for construction of Port Health. Port Health is infrastructure at the border points of entry. And this was to cover for 2 Port Health at Malaba and Busia. And constructions are ongoing accordingly. Right Honorable, the third question was whether we have requested for a supplementary for ICU beds and oxygen. I think I did state here that we have placed a supplementary to Ministry of Finance for oxygen. ICU beds were procured for all the regional referral hospitals, 10 beds each. The challenge we have is that not all the beds have been installed because of infrastructure challenges. And again, this has been discussed, and we are seeking funding to set up additional infrastructure, but that will not address the current issue. However, we must take note that the admission criteria is for severe and critical cases. And we shall be adjusting the available space to fit these ICU beds. On the issue of testing capacity, which is limited, Right Honorable Prime Minister, allow me to inform the media that we have 25 laboratories that can test for PCR all over the country, and they are all functional. And then the rapid or fast-track procurement, as long as it is paid, we can actually have them airlifted and brought into the country. So as soon as we get resources, we shall be going for the airlifting in bits as opposed to using the sea. I thank you.